ないで諦めないでほしい。今度こそ私たちはできる。風太郎とならできるよ。
Your greetings, it is Alessia, and welcome to my second ever anime commentary video. For those fairly wondering why this is my second Quintuplets commentary and yet I'm discussing Miku, who is of course the third Quint, I unfortunately lost the time-lapse footage for my Ichika emotes, so her commentary will be coming last, once I've made a new illustration for her to provide the video speed paint. As a disclaimer, it goes without saying, beware. Going forward there will be spoilers for the entire Quintessential Quintuplets manga and anime, including the ending and overall winner. Now, let's begin with the analysis. So, the precious enigma, star of our show, Miku Nakano, whose sad eyes and earnest love has captured the heart of thousands. She is the middle Nakano Quint, who shares a birthday of the 5th of May with her sisters, and brown hair is seen in the manga and anime, as well as blue eyes, another trait that links her with her sisters. In terms of personality, Miku begins the series as somewhat glum and listless, acting timid and submissive. Her most distinguishing visual feature is the blue headphones she wears almost constantly, even in some scenes featuring water, which seems concerning. This connects to the motif of insecurity that features throughout her arc. Her headphones are a way for her to hide from the world, as well as escape from herself. It also hides her neck, which is a part of her body and shows her insecurity around her physical attractiveness, feeling less desirable than her sisters despite them all being identical. In terms of character archetype, Miku shows some traits associated with the dandere trait, meaning silent and loving. Dan-marie is Japanese for silent, and dere-dere is a phrase here meaning to become affectionate. These characters are mostly silent, but tend to become more vibrant around people they care about, especially their love interests. Hinata from Naruto and Ami Mizuno from Sailor Moon are exemplary of this character trope. Miku shows these traits throughout the series, becoming far more expressive as her love for Fuutarou deepens. She falls for Fuutarou almost immediately, quickly accepting him into the fold after a small initial resist after she fails on her test on warlords, which many of her sisters soon pick up on. Not Itsuki though, she was probably too distracted by burgers or something. Miku wants Fuutarou to see her as a romantic option, as she feels he considers her just another one of the Quints, his students. Her character development shows through her relationship with Fuutarou, but also her increasing reliance on her directly older sister Nino, which we talked about in the last commentary. If you're interested, feel free to check it out. Today, we will only explore their relationship from Miku's point of view, as we have already looked at Nino's motivations. These relationships motivate the changes she goes through during the series, and are the most important factor to consider when analysing her as a character. Each of the Quints have a slightly different relationship with Miku. Though Ichika, first Quint, initially supports Miku in her pursuit of Fuutarou, and they start the series seemingly very close. One of Miku's closest sibling relationships actually, as they pair together early on for their test of courage, and do lots of activities together compared to the other sisters, becoming her most active wingman during the first series in her pursuit for Fuutarou. But once she comes to accept her own feelings for Fuutarou, she starts to quickly turn against Miku, eventually culminating in her betrayal during the Sisters' War arc. Miku, however, seems to support Ichika and compromises her own interest to help Ichika, telling Fuutarou about Ichika's movie and defending her interests. She is even just confused and not angry during the betrayal, and quickly forgives her sister for her actions. They trust each other greatly at the start of the series and share acting talent, although Miku greatly outperforms her sister despite Ichika's excessive acting experience. As Fuutarou enters their lives, their relationship becomes increasingly strained, and they unfortunately enter a competition for his affection. Yotsuba seems to have an intuitive understanding of Miku, quickly picking up on the latter's attraction to Fuutarou and sticking up for her in the competition. She seems to support Miku to win more than the other sisters, especially at the start before she notices the feelings of people like Ichika. Itsuki and Miku do not interact very much at all during the series, as much of Itsuki's storyline relating to the sisters lies within her close relationship with Nino, but they certainly care for each other and get along amicably, much better than Miku gets along with Itsuki's best friend Nino. Itsuki tends to lack a bit of perception though, not noticing Miku's feelings for Fuutarou until Miku tells her about them, even though the others picked up on this fact almost immediately. She roots for Miku though, and gets very excited when she finds out about Miku's attraction to Fuutarou, wanting to support her sister before anything else. Miku's most important sisterly relationship in terms of her character development comes in her interactions with Nino. Both are passionate and stubborn in their own very different ways, and their completely diametric differences in interest and personality lead to their opening relationship to be the most strained among the sisters, even leading Ichika to compare their relationship to cat and dog. They contrast greatly to each other in terms of personality and in their methods of pursuing Fuutarou once that arc begins. Nino is very direct and abrasive, whilst Miku prefers a softer and subtler approach, leading them to quarrel often. They are blunt and sometimes even insulting to each other. They are at odds at everything, even in situations not involving their romantic competition. However, their relationship goes through one of the greatest changes in the series, possibly even becoming the closest pairing eventually. This arguably starts with a conversation they have together when Nino has run away from home. Miku helps Nino to understand that it's not just the other sisters who have changed, that Nino has also changed even though she feels abandoned by the changing of the quintuplet relationship, and then helps her to cut her hair to symbolize a new beginning for Nino. Nino then follows this by protesting Ichika's imposter betrayal, and later comforting Miku, who feels unworthy of Fuutarou. She reminds her that she is also cute. If she finds it so easy to call the other quints cute, why can't she give this honour to herself, even though they're all identical? They become closer and closer after these few interactions, eventually culminating in their support for each other in the fight for Fuutarou. Nino helps Miku to attract Fuutarou through her culinary wisdom, by helping Miku with her mission to make good food for him, which even helped Miku to realise her ambition to attend culinary school. Miku even ends up making better pancakes than Nino, as her skills improve greatly during the story. When Fuutarou makes the choice to take a chance with Yotsuba, Miku comes first to Nino, and they hug each other whilst despairing. This leads to them becoming close enough to even open a bakery together, the closest of sisters. This change represents Miku accepting herself and allowing herself to have ambitions that match her personal wants, instead of what others believe is the best for her, especially due to her academic intelligence. Much of Miku's character motivations arrive from the Gotobun Principle. This states that the Nakano quintuplets are supposed to share all their emotions together, their joy, their sadness, anger, their love, and split everything equally. This sentiment was initially created by their grandfather, and is a reflection of how similar the quintuplets used to be, in both looks and even personality. It is reflected in the sisters when they transfer schools with Yotsuba, even though she was the only one who failed, and giving up their apartment for Fuutarou, stating that all that matters is that they are together, the 5 of them. The principle allows them to keep a stable relationship and helps them to stay together when the bonds between them are especially strained. The Gotobun Principle is especially significant to Miku and affects her interactions with Fuutarou. She over-relies on the principle and believes she isn't even allowed to progress in front of her sisters. They must remain equal. Fuutarou explains to her, in an igloo, that they all started at the same point, and all have the potential to progress the same amount because they're quintuplets, so the activities they put effort into reflect their current skills. He says they shouldn't be held back by anything. He doesn't want their separate efforts to be disregarded through handicaps. He proposes to be fair, not equal. Miku struggles to accept this though, as she feels a fair competition would lead to her losing Fuutarou. She didn't know a fair competition would be so scary. This accentuates her insecurity and stops her being able to feel confident in her own ability. Her dandere characteristics are most evident within her romantic development with Fuutarou. She starts off quiet and a little dismissive of him, especially once she realizes the lack of depth in his knowledge of her favorite topic, Sengoku period warlords, something that she keeps a secret from everyone, even her sisters, for fear of being made fun of. She starts to open up towards him though after he dedicates himself to learning more, understanding the reference she had made before. She begins to blossom as she falls in love with Fuutarou, dedicating herself to showing him that she is a girl, not just his student. Fuutarou views her as glum, listless, and hard to read, but notices how she becomes more vibrant during her character arc. He still thinks she's an idiot, though. But then again, who doesn't he think is an idiot? They become close, bonding over their similar lack of athletic ability and comparative intelligence. According to Yotsuba and proven by her final exam score, Miku is the smartest of the sisters, appealing to study-obsessed Fuutarou. She also defends him against the vicious attacks from her other sisters, especially Nino's. They seem very comfortable together, as shown through Miku dropping the custom honorifics and referring to him only as Fuutarou. However, Miku's obvious attraction is picked up even by dense Fuutarou, much to Yotsuba's surprise, which makes him uncomfortable as he doesn't know how to respond to her feelings, especially because of the conflicting interests of the other quintuplets. Miku realizes that she admires how Fuutarou emanates warmth, and so she accepts him as a tutor and eventually a member of the family. Though she wants him for herself, she feels dwarfed by her sisters and enjoys the relationship they share between the six of them. Like Nino, Miku tends to go to the extremes of her archetype of dandere, making sure to keep Fuutarou happy and comfortable even to an excessive amount. She even makes him sick by feeding him too much of her home-cooked food, which she puts lots of effort into improving, wanting to show him that she is the perfect wife, with the ideal feminine traits that are typically praised. This may have arisen from him telling the Quints that his ideal girl would be an excellent cook. It also links to her competitive nature and the constant escalation of her rivalry with Nino, who is an excellent cook from the start of the manga, and even makes the food for the quintuplets. Miku and Fuutarou are involved in several common romantic tropes, teasing their compatibility that is eventually left unresolved. He even manages to recognize her first out of all the quintuplets, something he generally struggles with, as shown in all the incidences of the quintuplet game. And as the Nakano family like to say, it is only love that will allow you to tell the difference between the quintuplets. Love will show you the way. Her personal development comes in the form of her coming to accept herself and claim her identity as a whole person. Perhaps even more than Nino, she is trapped by the quintuplet label and feeling like she is only worth 1/5 of a person, or from her point of view, probably even less, due to her intense feelings of insecurity, making her feel like almost a ghost of a person in comparison to her sisters. This is represented symbolically through her being the middle sister, literally lost in the middle of the quintuplets. She's also able to come to terms with her own ambitions. She begins the series insecure, and this deepens as she enters into her pursuit of Fuutarou, which calls greater attention to her flaws, specifically her lack of traditional feminine skills that may be seen as becoming for a wife. The idea of a fair fight terrifies this sentiment. She finds it scary to compete against her sisters, who she feels are far more alluring than she is. She cannot see her impersonal beauty and the traits that make her special, such as her adoring kindness and earnest feelings. Miku is a prime example of a character who deserved better. She is perfectly engineered to be the perfect waifu, leading many to fall for her shy charms. Her dandere qualities make her mysterious and interesting, but her sweetness and romanticism make her easy to get along with. She also received comparatively more focus in her romantic arc than the other sisters, arguably even more than Nino. These all add together to make her an attractive representative for the title of Best Girl, as her romantic compatibility and chemistry with Fuutarou become apparent during their many interactions. On paper, she is actually the best match for him due to her superior intelligence compared to the other quints and her sweet and protective nature, creating a safe bubble for Fuutarou. She is passionate about her interests and works hard to achieve her goals, just like Fuutarou. Interestingly, they are both unfit but willing to change this, as shown by her present of a shared membership to a gym club. Miku also falls for Fuutarou very quickly and is quite obvious in her feelings. Though she can be hard to read, this apparent interest suits Fuutarou, as his dense harem protag brain is able to pick up on her signals much more easily than the other sisters. For audiences, this also makes her much more palatable, as though she be timid, she isn't shy to show her feelings through dedication, rather than deny her feelings with aggression. Her insecurities also make her relatable to real life, as the other sisters can feel like caricatures, exact recreations of the trope they are examining. But Miku has this humanizing characteristic that allows her to be empathized with. I'm sure we can all understand feeling unworthy and inferior compared to our peers, especially those of us with siblings. This is magnified for Miku because of the close nature of the quintuplet relationship. Miku is therefore a projection of the audience in the show, naturally making us root for her. This is magnified through her introversion, as most of us weebs are the same. I mean, why else would we spend all day inside watching anime? Her dedication to wearing her headphones is also admirable, going so far as to even literally jump in a river wearing them. She's also a perfect foil to the overdone tsundere trope, showing her affection through expressions of care. This naturally places her in competition with Nino, but is still important to consider independently in regards to her own personal role within the story. She is an answer to the ever-increasing representation of overly violent and even abusive tsunderes in fiction. She is a role model through her soft expression of love. She also cares deeply for her sisters and puts them first, even before herself. Meanwhile, some betray each other in order to have the best chance to win. This allows her to gain the unspoken support of not only the audience, but even the other quintuplets, who each help her development with Fuutarou in their own way. Miku has several motifs that link to her development and provide a visual key for the journey she goes on during the narrative. As with many of the sisters, a significant example is her hair. In Miku, this is evident through the style she chooses to wear it, as well as the colour she is shown in having in the anime and manga. Miku typically wears her hair directly in front of her eyes, taking notes from other shy and insecure characters, like Violet in The Incredibles, which represents her tendency to withdraw. It also shows her comparative shyness when compared to the other quints, whose eyes are completely revealed despite their various different hairstyles. It also perhaps suggests that something led to Miku losing her vibrancy, as several flashbacks show that Miku used to share the same long flowing locks as her sisters, styled away from her face, and the Gotobun Principle links to the quintuplets originally having more similar personalities. When Yotsuba begins to wear a green ribbon in her hair, Miku subsequently chooses to adopt the hairstyle she sports for most of the story. This possibly signifies the beginning of her feelings of insecurity, as it starts the idea of fair not equal that becomes a significant plot thread throughout the narrative, as symbolised through the romantic battle over Fuutarou. Miku's hair is also dark, linking to her mental struggles and general listlessness. It allows her to camouflage into the background, and also makes her hair colour the least visually distinct from the audience's point of view of all the quints. It looks the most natural to us. As Miku's story develops, she begins to wear her hair away from her face more consistently, framing the beauty of her face more effectively and revealing more of her. This coincides with her revealing her own feelings more through acting more outwardly romantic and even confessing to Fuutarou. This starts when she chooses to change her style to gain Futarou's attention, though his lack of awareness to physical attractiveness leads him to ignore this development. Though she returns back to her common style for most of the story, by the end she is wearing it completely away from her face as she lives her dream running a bakery with Nino. It is a visual representation of her accepting herself and coming to terms with her identity and passions. It is also a practical decision relating to her newfound dedication to cooking, as her hair cannot be in her face if she is working with food. She is able to see properly, both literally and metaphorically, showing her finally able to understand herself and what she wants. As with last time, it is time at last to answer the question: is the ending a waste of such a perfect and precious character? For me, the answer is kind of, yeah. It seemed almost certain that Miku would be the winner and eventually be Futarou's bride due to their compatibility, both in personality and interests, and Miku's clear dedication to him. It is unclear the depth of Futarou's feelings for Miku, as he states he loves each and every one of the quints, but he seems unsure himself, which suggests he could have seen them together. As a fan of Miku, it is also devastating to read the scene where she and Nino commiserate together after Fuutarou officially rejects them. Through her being the first, arguably second though, one could argue that Yotsuba had already fallen in love when she met him, as Reina in Kyoto 5 years previously, to pick up on her romantic feelings for Fuutarou, and the dedicated focus on her throughout the manga, it seems sure that she would be the bride. She was the first to be recognized by him, and her love is the most simple and uncomplicated of the sisters, again, arguably except Yotsuba, which suits Futarou's compatibility style. However, it is gratifying to see her achieve her newfound dreams of working in the culinary field with her sister Nino. She is able to find success in a field that she showed almost no promise in at the start of the manga. This shows her achieving something she put effort into purely because of her own merit, a microcosm of her relationship with Fuutarou, but with an altered ending. It is the conclusion of her insecurity arc, as it is her claiming her own identity and desires, and achieving something purely through hard work and her own efforts as a whole person, not 1/5 of a whole. This represents her rejection of her previous interpretation of the Gotobun Principle, as she is allowing her decision to impact her life and her life only, taking on Futarou's mantra of fair and not equal. Her new interpretation of the principle is about love and care for her sisters, as well as being happy for their successes. The ending is also the resolution of her rivalry with Nino, as they become the closest of sisters and bond over their shared love for cooking. This is the author subverting the stereotypes of the archetypes of Miku and Nino being diametrically opposed and ending up as enemies, the latter usually being the bride despite her abusive tendencies. It is a show of the female and especially family solidarity that is the core message of the narrative. The sisters come together despite all their romantic competition, and Nino and Miku ending up the closest is the surest sign of the sisters truly being happy for each other, despite the conclusion of the bride plot thread. However, for me at least, seeing Miku be the bride, or at least finding some kind of romantic fulfillment by the end of the manga, would have been more satisfying as a fan of hers from the beginning of the story, as it would wholly disprove the validity of her insecurities and show that she is worthy of romance as herself. Finally, is Miku best girl? Yes, no further questions, Your Honor. I'm just joking, of course, but I really do think Miku is a great competitor for the role of ultimate waifu, but that is not the point of this analysis. The dandere trope can make for a very appealing anime girl in several circumstances, as her mysterious, timid nature can make her fascinating to audiences. Her lack of violent tendencies or fierce nature make her palatable as a romantic interest and an understandable choice if she wins her story. Fortunately, this was not to be for our Miku. She also deserved better. I hope you liked this commentary and found something interesting in my analysis of the dandere trope in anime through Miku Nakano's development in the Quintessential Quintuplets, or Gotobun no Hanayomi. Next in the series will be an analysis of the bride herself, the energetic and dependable Yotsuba, and boy, there's a lot to say on her. If you feel so inclined, subscribe to receive a notification when I release that video, or any other, and please leave a like if you enjoyed this video. If you disagree with me or have anything else to add to my analysis, please don't hesitate to comment down below. Thanks for watching,